days have passed. The excitement over where Hasina's chopper was going to land, what's going to happen next between India and Bangladesh, with China lurking in the back, the United States' elections right around the corner. I think we've passed that particular storm. It's now about what Yunus's interim government is up to. Now, Chinmoy Krishna Das Brahmachari and the arrest, charges of sedition for leading a protest against hate crimes that sparked international outrage. Do you believe this is part of a broader crackdown on dissent? Is there a pattern that we can look at here? How are you looking at it? Help the viewers from your point of view, ma'am.
Well, I can say quite categorically that the attack on the minority communities, the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Christians, these began in Dhaka the very day that Sheikh Hasina left Dhaka on the 5th of August 2024. And really, in the first few days and weeks, these attacks were horrendous because they included killings and rapes and burnings of homes and looting of properties. It was absolutely horrendous. But at that time, as we know, that Prime Minister Modi raised it at every level. He raised it in his first message on the taking over of Muhammad Yunus. He raised it in a telephone call with Muhammad Yunus. He raised it, Prime Minister Modi raised it from the ramparts of Red Fort about our concern about the plight of Hindus and other minorities in Bangladesh. Prime Minister Modi raised it with President Joe Biden when he had a telephonic conversation with him. So the concern across the country in India on the situation of Hindus and other minorities in Bangladesh is palpable, is strong, and growing more and more serious day by day. After that, when Muhammad Yunus, the chief advisor of the interim government, he said, no, these were not, communal attacks. They were because political link to Awami League, etc. After that, the pressure started on the economic livelihood of the minority communities. Hindu professors were forced to resign from universities. Hindu teachers were forced to resign from schools. And we had also a continuation with direct attacks on Buddhist minorities in Khagrachari, in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. And they too were not able to celebrate their major festival because these attacks on their communities. Then there were attacks on the Hindu community in Chittagong. First in all around the country, then focused in Chittagong, then in Rangpur. Recently, the same Chinmoy Prabhu, the head of the ISKCON, who has been charged with sedition, he led a huge demonstration of the Hindus in Rangpur less than a week ago. And despite a lot of prevention by the authorities and lack of permission and so on, the people were there in their thousands, showing the very serious concern. I must tell you one important factor here, that this time the Hindus and other minorities have taken a very strong stand that this is our country. We want our rights. They have made a charter of 8 demands that they have given to the Muhammad Yunus government. And they have said that we want our rights, we want protection of minorities, we want a law on this subject, we want a ministry, a separate ministry to deal with the subject. And they've taken it up very strongly. The younger generation among the Hindus and other minorities have said, we will not move out. There have been massive demonstrations by the younger generation in Dhaka and in other places demanding their rights. Now, the interim government led by Muhammad Yunus has refused even to take any action. They have not, arrested anybody. They have not said that we're going to launch an investigation. Well, they made some noises about it in the beginning, but there's been no formal investigation. So actually, the minority communities are feeling very vulnerable. They're feeling seriously worried about their future and how it will proceed. I think we have seen there's a huge reaction globally. President Donald Trump made a strong statement about the chaos in Bangladesh, the barbaric attacks on the Hindus in Bangladesh, and he even spoke about the Hindu phobia in American universities. The international community, Indians in America, have demonstrated just over this weekend against this, talking about the need for strong action against the attacks on minorities. So it's a very serious situation. We have to more and more strongly in every way we can.
You're right, Ambassador. We'll have to wait and find out as to how the international community is now going to react to it. Of course, Suhas Chakma, Director, Rights and Risks Analysis Group, also with us on the broadcast. And Suhas, even as, the On Point show was getting over, I remember you guys talking about Manipur. And, it's not just about Manipur, but the entire northeastern area. But, specifically focusing on Bangladesh and the RRAG statement. I'm going to just quote your own statement on this point. Of course, the Rights and Risks Analysis Group has condemned this particular arrest of the ISKCON leader. But you go on to say that Dr. Yunus is turning out to be a dictator invoking sedition offense to silence critics too. led you to say that, help the viewers understand what's happening there? Because, of course, there is a pattern at play over here. Ambassador was also talking about the CHTs.
Well, I think, I mean, when normal criminal offenses are invoked, the provisions are invoked, Bangladesh Penal Code, it's understood. But we had never seen in Bangladesh sedition being invoked. Sedition was not an offense which was invoked by Sheikh Hasina. So sedition is being invoked by, Yunus government, not only against the ISKCON chief, but also the officer who was in Khulna, who was only critical of Tabassum, who was only critical, made a post basically in the Facebook critical of Muhammad Yunus. Now, Muhammad Yunus is supposed to be a liberal and Nobel laureate. Now, when he acts like a dictator, then obviously, or invokes sedition, you have to see the change that he is actually not a liberal, he is a dictator, and he is running at the end of the day, which people don't realize, that he is running the country through a mobocracy. What is mobocracy? When he says that this is not acceptable, he only needs to send certain students from the Boishamo Berodi Andolan, the students. Then, you can make the Chief Justice resign, you can take away the judicial work or functions from certain judges and etc. So the entire country is being run through the mob rule, which is the students. And if you are actually respectful towards the constitution of Bangladesh, then obviously you would not have, been in power for such a long period of time, at a time when you have no clear roadmap. And when we talk about, dictatorship, please remember, the dictatorship is not only charged or, with respect to the opposition, which they are doing because they have completely wiped out, or he wants to completely wipe out the Awami League, which is, you could say, 50% of the population in the country. So he has, thrown them out of the bus, in the sense that he doesn't want to include, he has not included anybody from the foreign party alliance. But this particular arrest, why has this arrest been made? This arrest has been made for only to send a message that Hindus and Buddhists and other religious minorities must not organize, as Madam Sikri was saying. So when they are starting in Bangladesh, which was not seen earlier in the last 50 years, the change which has come from the Hindu minorities and the Buddhists, it becomes a problem. So if you had seen in Khagrachari on 18th of September, 40,000 people had assembled, which Chittagong Hill Tracks had never seen in its history, from the British period till today. And next day they go attack and kill, and we have mentioned that. And now you had a big demonstration on 25th August in Chittagong, the October in Chittagong, where the Hindus organized just seeking protection or highlight their violations. So they cannot find anything. So you invoke sedition, which is punishable with, death, or which could be punishable with imprisonment for life. So there is a pattern that you file a case against Chinmoy and large number of unknown people. And in fact, in the hill tracks, what they have done is they have filed cases against the hill tribe students. And the people who are killed by the settlers and the Bangladesh army, we are the hill tribes. And they just organized a protest, they were attacked, they were killed, and now they are being charged. They have been charged and they are being prosecuted. So the entire justice system has been turned. It's only a dictator who can do it. And I think the West is gradually realizing the fact that this guy is not a Democrat. He has been a failure. I think it took them for about 100 days to realize. But I think they have realized the fact that he is not. And that's why he is inviting actually about 20 odd diplomats from Delhi to Dhaka. You can imagine the kind of pressure he is under.
No, absolutely. He has to put up a different face, because people are not, suffixing the Nobel laureate in front of his name anymore after these moves. And Ambassador Sikri, help the viewers understand, because is this Yunus being the dictator, or is this a case of the Islamists dictating to Yunus? Because sweeping political and judicial reforms, the Constitutional Reform Committee is now drafting changes to the Constitution. Chief Justice and 5 judges. You earlier spoke about the Hindu professors that were, forcefully made to relinquish their positions, and minority communities, especially Hindus, living in fear. Bangabandhu Mujibur Rahman's statue being defaced, emblematic of the fact that, well, he's got nothing to do with the country's history anymore. Is this a case of him being the dictator, or the Islamists dictating to him?
Well, I think that Muhammad Yunus is just not in control. It is very right, as Suhas Chakma says, that the world thought of Muhammad Yunus as a Nobel laureate, and therefore a Democrat, a liberal-minded person who would not allow any of such serious offences and violations of liberty and the law to allow to happen. But he is completely being controlled by the Islamists. It is the Jamaat-e-Islami which is completely in control, and even the Jamaat-e-Islami, the Hizb ut-Tahrir, a banned organization, their members have been included as advisors in the interim government, which is a complete violation of the spirit in which the interim government is supposed to serve for a very short period just to organize the elections. And the interim government is not supposed to involve itself with concerns like reforms and to set up all these constitutional commissions and so on. And they've been calls to change the constitution and to, even to take away the position of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman as father of the nation, and even questioning the veracity of the 1971 liberation war. So I think that all this has not only shocked the world, it has shocked many people in Bangladesh as well. And Bangladesh, the people are not supporting Muhammad Yunus at all in the kind of way that the world was expecting that Muhammad Yunus would be supported. And he is now finding himself increasingly isolated because he's unable to exert himself. He's just doing what the Islamists want him to do. Whatever they want him to sign, he's signing off on the arrest warrants, and that is what is happening. He's not concerning himself with the rights and wrongs of the situation. I remember seeing some interviews in the recent days when the interim government completed 100 years of its rule in Bangladesh. And when he was asked about the attack on minorities, he had nothing to say. He didn't even once express any sympathy. He didn't even once realize or express that yes, these were communal incidents which should be completely avoided. He just defined the people who were doing this as activists. Now, activists of what? He just has a fixation on Sheikh Hasina. Is he saying that anybody who is asserting their rights, the Hindus are asking for their rights, that they are agents of the Awami League? I mean, it's bizarre, the kind of statement. That is why at the recent demonstrations in California over the weekend by the Indian American community,
Right.
was described as a Hindu hater. I mean, it's really amazing what he is doing and what he's unable to do. He's not doing, it's amazing to see what he's not doing and what he is unable to do because he's in control by the Islamists. So I think that we are really worried about the situation, and the fact that the people in Bangladesh are not really accepting these kinds of attacks on minorities. Nobody is wanting it, but the media is not able to write about it because they're not able to write anything that the Islamists don't want. So even the freedom of press, which was there earlier, is no longer there. And
Yep.
there are attacks on the minorities, the big demonstration in Chittagong and in Rangpur, these have not been reported in the mainstream media. So actually, a lot of people in Bangladesh don't even know about what's going on.
A
It's only
clampdown
through
of information is that what you're suggesting here, Ambassador? And I'm going to take this same question, to Suhas as well, because Suhas, from the prism of the RRAG as well, in your opinion, what kind of international pressure is now needed to tackle this situation? How should the entire global community now look at this? Because this does warrant a discussion across the length and breadth of the globe.
Well, I think, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, when he visited Bangladesh and he gave his concluding observation on 30th October, he was very clear that, rule of law had to be applied. There is a need for a national reconciliation, and you could not give the indemnity to the people or the students who had killed, at least, as per the government, it was 44 police officers during the uprising, and you had to include the minorities and etc. So I think the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights had set the tone more than many of the international NGOs, which were rightly earlier critical of Sheikh Hasina government, but now are absolutely silent. I think I just slightly disagree with little bit with Madam Sikri on one point. We have to understand that Dr. Yunus is a Jamindar. He did not get the Nobel Prize for Peace. He did not get the Nobel Prize for his belief in democracy, rule of law, liberalism. He is a Jamindar, and as Hasina used to say, he's an interest taker. So, it's all style Jamindars who have now suddenly become, recognized for the microcredit and etc. And we all know how the EMI agents and etc. one. He is a master of that, those EMI gangs at the village level. So his history, if it is, evaluated properly with the beneficiaries and the victims, the victims will not be less than the beneficiaries. So his worldview is actually is of a local union parishad chairman. So that's why, as Madam Secretary had said, he remains fixated with Hasina. He cannot think of anything else except taking Hasina to jail and try to bring her to jail. And in the entire process, he lost the opportunity that as a father figure, the only one who was acceptable in Bangladesh, he could have said, all those who are involved in corruption, crime, they will not be allowed to contest elections. Let's have free and fair elections. He has given, forgotten completely about free and fair elections. If there is no pressure from international community, he even as late as on 14th of this month, when he was in Baku, he did not give a definite date for elections, and he wants to serve the remaining term of Sheikh Hasina. So his entire outlook is to remain in power for 4.5 years. He is thinking or changing his tune only because there is tremendous amount of pressure for not holding the election, including from BNP. So that makes Yunus absolutely a dictator, because a Democrat would not have stayed beyond holding of the elections. He doesn't want to hold
very
elections.
interesting point, Suhas. That's actually a very interesting point. I'm going to say take the same point to Ambassador Sikri, because Ambassador, like Suhas pointed out, as recent as the Baku COP29 summit, there is no particular date for these elections. He's said it time and again. I'm going to take Bangladesh to a free and fair elections, but there's no timeline for that. Why do you think that is happening? What's the reason for this delay? Do you concur with what Suhas is saying here? Because you have 4.5 years, the interim government is going to stay in control, and of course the Islamists with this interim government.
Yes, I think the fact that there is no date for an election is a clear indication, again, that Muhammad Yunus is in the hands of the Islamists. It's the Jamaat-e-Islami that does not want early elections to be held. And so they're giving this call that reforms first and then elections. But actually just today, Tariq Rahman, the head of the BNP, but although he's been sitting in London, has not been allowed to come back to Bangladesh. He said today that elections must be held, otherwise there will be conspiracy theories, and you cannot delay the elections. The reforms will go on. I mean, they will go on, and they can only be completed by an elected government. None of the reforms that Muhammad Yunus is calling for are such that can be done by an unelected government, by an unelected group of people appointing other people with no absolute rules and regulations, just anybody they feel like. They force the judges to resign, then they appoint new judges in their place. This is not part of their remit. This is not part of their definition of responsibilities, but they're taking it on their own. And now the Jamaat-e-Islami, which used to be in a coalition with the BNP, is clearly separating from them, and they want an entirely Islamist government. That's why I spoke about the Hizb ut-Tahrir and now Jamaat-e-Islami. They want only the Islamists to come into control. They want a new constitution compliant with Sharia law, and they want to isolate the BNP as well. But the BNP is pressing very hard for early elections, and even surveys done in Bangladesh by the Voice of America and others have shown that the majority of people want early elections, and the number of majority who wants early elections is growing. And people are increasingly saying that things were better under Sheikh Hasina than they are now, because there is inflation, there is nothing available. Investors have not come back to Bangladesh. Projects have stopped. Unemployment is very, very high, and it's a terrible situation. No law and order at all. Complete anarchy, mobocracy. And the fact that even with the mobocracy under his control, Muhammad Yunus could not get the president of Bangladesh, President Shahabuddin, to resign, because nobody came out of the streets. And the BNP said clearly that we should not have the president to resign, because it will be a complete constitutional crisis in Bangladesh. So there's a complete internal mess, and I think the sooner that it is solved through holding elections and bringing an elected government into power, the better it will be for peace and prosperity and for the neighborhood.
Pertinent points, Ambassador. And I think you've hit the nail on the head when you say this is internal mess, headless chickens when you're looking at the Yunus government.